Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here, that I'm here, that we all made it this far. As difficult as it is, and sometimes it's like, why did I even bother coming here? So welcome back, everyone, to my subscribers and to my consistent viewing audience. I appreciate you so much. And if you're new here, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, to hit that like button. If you want to share this content, even commenting, being part of the chat, it really does actually support this work. And I'm really grateful for that. So thank you in advance, or thank you if you're already doing that. And of course, if you want to monetarily support this work, all of these transmissions are my offering, and they are given freely. But if you do want to support this work, and I do have specific financial goals for my Subscribe Star, which is linked in the description box below, you can do that for $3 a month, and it supports all of this daily content that I offer. So welcome, everyone. It's Friday. It's Halloween weekend. The veil is certainly thin, and we have a new moon coming on the 4th of November, which will really kick off Scorpio season, I think, officially. And is it really any accident that our moon is in Leo right now, the sign of the sun, and we are getting bombarded with an incredible array of solar activity? So I would be irresponsible, perhaps, if I did not actually address the incredible solar flare and the massive coronal mass ejection that came right after it yesterday. So we'll just look a little bit at some of the data because it's been substantial. And what's very interesting to me is that the Schumann isn't, in response to that. It's almost like the field adjusted itself to really be able to handle the impact of the solar activity. So we've talked about this before. When that amplitude spikes, it's usually because there's some sort of stimulation in the field or to the field, the electromagnetic field, that causes it to get louder or to have a larger wavelength. And this is solar energy. This is geomagnetic storms. This is lightning and any kind of electrical discharge within the ionosphere or the magnetosphere, or unknown origin. I like that one as well. Seismic activity seems to correlate to these amplitude spikes in the Schumann. So, but we're going to look at the chart, and it's not really, except for that one red line that just keeps going up and down and up and down. So we'll take a look at that before we get into the astrology, just to check in about that kind of stuff. Now, if you haven't gone over to Telegram, I posted a bunch of links to some interesting videos, and of course, a video from Suspicious Observers yesterday. That's only a 2-minute video that's addressing this X-class solar flare and the CME. So the CME is expected to arrive as early as tomorrow, maybe as late as Halloween Day, the 31st. So we'll see what the Schumann and the field does in the face of a arriving coronal mass ejection, all of that plasma coming at us. But the X-class solar flare, it really didn't disturb the Schumann that much, not as much as it's been disturbed in the past, that's for sure. So I find that really interesting. And if you look at the graph that is tracking the density and the pressure of the magnetosphere, there's not a lot of pushing back pressure that's going on right now as well. So these are all interesting dots to connect. And speaking of connecting dots, this is really the essence of what we're going to get ourselves into for November and Scorpio season. The Sabian symbol for the new moon at 13 degrees Scorpio is about being in that laboratory, our own alchemical lab, and really starting to put some things together that we maybe not have put together before, because we feel this strong urge to get to the bottom of things, to really succeed in our civilization, and to actually make an impact in a positive way. That's certainly the best case scenario with all of these things. Is how can we utilize this energy and these archetypal references to assist in the awakening and just the evolution of the whole planet in general, and to assist in service to all living beings. So the inventor in the laboratory is really going to symbolize a lot. And it's about the willingness to make connections that we haven't made before, in an effort to actually create something or produce something. We've talked about this recently too, how Scorpio in the 8th house has this basic element of production behind it, because it is in fact what we produce in the perfect form of relationship that Libra represents. So we're going to be starting to come out of Libra and, leaving that energy behind for a while. Mars is going to come into Scorpio this weekend. So, it's certainly no accident, I think, for Mars to come into Scorpio on Halloween weekend right now. This is, pretty significant, with a Scorpio new moon. And Vesta in Scorpio, we're going to talk about Vesta. She is paving the way or giving us insight into what it is that is going to be experienced over the course of November, especially as the Sun and Mars and then soon to be Mercury all cross into Scorpio, and they're all going to make this trine to Neptune. Well, this weekend, Vesta is going to make that trine, and we're going to see that it is the spark or the vitality or the sustainment of the fire in our own soul that we're going to get an insight into. That is, hopefully, the plan is for that to carry us through. Every single time the Sun and Mars and Mercury cross into that zone where they trine Neptune, right? What's a trine? It's a 120-degree angle. It is one angle of an equilateral triangle. A very strong natural structure is the triangle, or the pyramid, I guess, if you want to add to that. So we'll be talking about that too. Sun is going to square Saturn this weekend. Speaking of Scorpio and fixed squares and Saturn, right? There's going to be some ego struggle, right? The inner child is going to square off with the inner father. And there's some real ego battles with the Sun squaring Saturn. And then let's see what else is going on. Venus is coming back into the mix. Mercury is still in its shadow, so it's going to be crossing over a lot of points that it crossed over. Specifically, it's going to be in a trine to now direct Jupiter, right? Direct Jupiter that is in Aquarius. So Mercury will be meeting Spica and having that trine, and then we'll be again squaring Pluto, also now direct. So in conjunction with Arcturus. So these are energies that have already happened, and they were in retrograde when they happened. Now everything is moving forward. So we'll see a real opportunity to not only engage those energies again, Arcturus and Spica, meeting with Pluto, meeting with Jupiter, these large planets that have very vast impact on us. And then Mercury, right? Mercury is a very personal planet. It represents how we each function at a cognitive level, at a nervous system or neural level, how we conceptualize the world right around us and in front of us. That's the function of our mind, is Mercury. And so things that we had already gone over in a much more internalized, perhaps introverted way is now going to be expressed outward, and experienced in an outward way as well. So that's all happening this week leading up to a new moon that's going to be directly opposite Uranus. And Uranus has shifted into a new degree as of this weekend. The baggage is going to become very heavy if we insist on hanging on to it. We cannot take it with us. And this is going to be still a retrograde for Uranus. So we're, again, going to be more of an internalized, introverted, maybe inverted, potentially, how you are addressing some of these things. We will be addressing within ourselves what we can't take with us through this wormhole and through this stargate of the collective, right? The evolution of human consciousness is, of all evolution, really, I think, and this goes entirely 180 degrees away from Darwin, by the way, just to be clear here, is the idea that evolution is a slow and steady progress. And of course it is, but Uranus would beg to differ, right? That Uranus is holding the space that it's usually in these massive reorientation moments that actually trigger the upgrade or the opening or the awareness of the full picture, right? And that's maybe where evolution possibly comes from. So, Darwin was certainly part of the Illuminati and a Freemason. So it's important to question the motives of people involved in these so-called secret societies, because they're the ones pulling all the levers, right? They're the ones who are writing the curriculum. So it's important that we really question their motivation and why they've put some of these ideas out into the mainstream for us to consume. So maybe there's something to lead us astray, perhaps. I don't know. These are just dots to connect, right? And this is what the new moon is going to be all about. It's going to set the intention for the following whole month of November, leading up to the new moon solar eclipse in December 4th. We have a whole month of growing each at an internal and individual level in our ability to really put ourselves into the process of being productive, and productive in a way that is about getting down to the underlying structure, being able to get into the depth of the human experience and how powerful it is. So there's a lot wrapping up here, because we're now in the last quarter of this lunar cycle. And so the moon is truly in her most waning phase. We'll be getting into the balsamic moon phase come, the second, right? Tuesday, Wednesday into Thursday. So as the moon is waning, even though, especially in a Leo moon, right? The tendency here is to really act on our own self-interest, our own solar rebirth, right? This creative self-expression that wants to come through us as a fully realized sovereign individual. And we're all feeling it right now. And I think the sun is really, really actually, in my opinion, and it hasn't been easy. Oh, it hasn't been easy. There's been some weird stuff coming up to our awareness, into our intuition specifically. But I think that it's part of this process here of becoming aware of who we are and how powerful we really are to create and to heal ourselves. But it's going to be when the moon comes into Virgo this weekend that we're going to have to really, okay, it's time to get down to brass tacks here and actually put that stuff into a physical, a manifested form within ourselves and surrender ourselves to the work that must be done. So, and there'll be other transits that have to do with our Virgo moon over the course of the weekend, especially, that are going to be important, and we'll go into all of that. So without further ado, I'm going to go over to the chat here, just check in. Good morning to Alex K. Yeah, I had crazy dreams last night. I don't even want to share them because they were so disturbing. There was so much disturbing imagery that I woke up just like, ugh. I don't want that sitting on my brain for the day, because it really made me uncomfortable. And whether or not that was an intrusion from outside or a reality check of the trajectory of where we're going, I can't say for sure. Good morning back to you, Emily. I feel very sunshiny today. I don't know why. It's raining and gross out, but it's all the Sagittarius, Venus and Sagittarius energy. I mean, it's like lighting up all of my stellium and Sag. So I think that's why. I literally spent yesterday getting rid of physical baggage clutter. It certainly was symbolic. The urge to minimize is strong now. Ooh, and wait till the moon gets into Virgo. I mean, every month that's usually my cleaning weekend or close to it, that time frame. When the moon's in Virgo, I'm just like, all right, let's clutter, let's get rid of the clutter. And that's my 7th and 8th house specifically. So it really comes into shared spaces that I'm uncluttering, into my own subconscious that I'm uncluttering. So I wonder again about the weird dreams that Alex brought up, that I wonder too how much needs to get like flushed out, that is just like, okay, we don't need to be focusing on these things, even though they are very real and in front of us, and certainly somebody's goal or agenda, but that's not my goal or agenda. Okay. Anyway, let's get into it. First, I want to share. We'll look at the. Yes, we're gonna look at the space weather, just so we understand it. It's important that we understand it, right? Because otherwise we'll just believe what anybody tells us about shit. And I'm not saying that I understand it completely, but I'm learning because I'm invested in actually researching. And thankfully I do have a background in stellar physics and cosmology and astrophysics. It's not much, but it's actually something. So that has given me the framework or a language to really understand a lot of this stuff. So I'm not really relying on necessarily other people's interpretation. So you shouldn't rely on mine either, right? This is all about connecting dots. Oh man, that's so much part of where we're going. So this is the chart. We don't want to look at that right this second. We want to look at this. So one thing I want to point out first is that this particular website that I use, let me get it centered here. We don't even have anything for today yet, right? So nothing has really happened as of the 29th. This isn't even updated for some reason. So I did go, where I did go is to the actual university itself in Russia, Tomsk University. That actually is the one in Russia. Huh, interesting. Measuring this, and this is where everybody's getting their data from, is this particular, I wouldn't say everybody, but most people are getting their Schumann graphs from this site. So, and you can see it's in Russian, so, oh, you can't see, sorry. There it is. You can see it's in Russian. So they do have today. So they don't have all of the fancy breakdown of all of this stuff necessarily, but what you do see is the actual color distribution within the measurement here. But what we do see is that there is a significant amplitude when this is about 1400 to 1600 UTC is, roughly 9 to 11 or 10 to noon-ish, right? Roughly on the East Coast of the U.S. So if you're on the West Coast, when you look at this graph and you look at the time, right, because this is in military time, so right here is the beginning of the 29th at midnight, you're going to put yourself, roughly about 8 hours behind that if you're on the West Coast. So, looking at this right now, even right here, this is 20, this is what, 8 o'clock. So you take it back 5 hours, 5 hours here. So that's like noon-ish. Or 8 hours, sorry. See, now I'm confused because this says it's the 29th. Maybe this isn't the time now that I'm thinking about it. Either way, we do see on the 29th, there's usually another, maybe this is in Russian time. That would actually make way more sense because this is way far ahead. Okay, sorry guys. I just like to be accurate. So, but we do see that there is significant amplitude today, and it was last night that we got that, yesterday and last night that we got the solar flare, and the CME is on the way. So we know that there is more disturbance, right? The amplitude is going up as of today in reference or in reaction or response to something. So it must be the X-class solar flare. But and some people are reporting symptoms, of course. I mean, I do have like some sort of low-grade headache, but for the most part, I actually feel pretty good. And I do think it's because our field, considering how much it's been weakening, is actually doing something. Like it is buffering these really, we'll see with the CME, that's going to be that's going to show us something. So when we look at this kind of data, right, we're going to look at this data here. First of all, we're going to see right here, this is called, strangely enough, NASA's Enlil spiral. Jeez, I mean, they put it right out there in front of our faces all the time. Enlil and Enlil and Anki, if you're familiar with those, the brothers. So there's Enlil or Enlil. This is just showing when the CME is released and then when they expect it to get here, because it was pretty substantial. And again, if you're not on Telegram, I'm really limiting my Facebook presence. I do put up these, but I'm putting all of my other stuff like on Telegram, but I will link those other videos in the description box for this video, the ones that I shared yesterday, because you do get to see the magnificent coronal mass. It was pretty big. So this is the X-ray, measuring the X-ray solar flare activity. And so you see here between the 28th and the 29th, there was a big spike, and then there was more. And where's X-ray? Well, X-ray is just past UV on the electromagnetic spectrum. So you have visible light, and then you have UV, which is a higher frequency, right? And then you have X-ray, which is an even higher frequency. And that's what this solar flare is. It's at an X-ray frequency when it's released. And so it'll have impacts on the magnetosphere, and I'll show you that in a second. But this is what's interesting to look at. This is the solar wind, right? So it's dipping and dipping and dipping. We're not in a coronal hole stream or anything that's going to speed up the solar wind coming at us, but this is the density of it. And so we see that it's going up. It came down a little bit. So the density of the solar wind is increasing and has been, but the speed has been decreasing, which I think is interesting too. But the geomagnetic effect is minimal. And you can see that here. When it's very active, it's these crazy red lines all over the place. But when it mellows out, it's starting to activate a little bit, but not really. And here too, if it's flipping, right, you see these little dots here. When the magnetic polarity is flipping a lot, that also has an impact, but it's been pretty stable as well. So we're not really having a lot of geomagnetic activity necessarily. You can even see that here. These green bars will say stable and calm magnetosphere. Now, what we do see, let's find it. Yes, here's the long wave radiation. You can see this is where the solar flare lit up auroras, is in these areas right here. And so the more the more hertz, right, the more frequency, the further towards this end that it goes, or absorption of those frequencies. So pretty substantial up around the poles, especially the North Pole, but also too, both poles. I mean, look at it here, but then also some absorption in the Atlantic, basically in this general area. So general area right here. So and that's at 5 megahertz, right? And so the higher energy it goes, the less absorption you're going to find. So he says right here, 15 megahertz, it's barely anything, right? It's purple and purple. So it's at the lowest amount of absorption. So even at 30 megahertz, there's barely any absorption. So we can see the intensity of it too, but it's not so intense that it's making this huge impact. So I just want to point that out so we understand what we're looking at. And people are asking about how solar weather can impact you. And I shared that one study about the cardiovascular system, anxiety, agitation, those types of things. And it seems like that if we're in coherence with the Schumann and in the planet itself, we are finding ourselves being buffered, right? When our field is directly linked into the network, the energetic network that's running under the crust of the planet that Tesla figured out, and we're connected to the heartbeat of the planet itself, then I feel like we're getting a buffer. So, and it's not to say that you're doing anything wrong if you are having symptoms, of course. I mean, I'm having symptoms too, but what I'm finding is that there is a connection here to our energetic practice and our work and our ability to tap into the natural grid of the planet to help us with some of the onslaught or the barrage of solar weather. So it's just what I am observing. And I am observing and integrating and coming to new conclusions all the time. And here we are back around to the new moon of connecting the dots, right? Connecting new dots, or connecting dots in a way we haven't connected before to make a totally new image. We're going to have all month of November to do that, but it's going to be intense, right? Scorpio is so intense. There is this drive with Scorpio, and to have Mars here with it, we're going to have a lot of fire under our ass to do this. So it's been so important that the Libra time, and Mercury's still in its shadow. It's not going to come out of its shadow till right before this new moon, actually. So even the mental processes are still going back over this old territory and applying it in new ways based on the retrograde in terms of what? Balance of form, what it means to be in harmony with the world around you, and the social order when you're in interpersonal relationships. And that does mean the people closest to us. That means our community. That means the globe. That means humanity. That means the galaxy, the universe. It spreads and spreads and spreads, right? It's not just here right now. Although if that's what's right in front of you to deal with, then that's exactly what you need to be doing. So, we are looking at our chart. So let's get started. Now that I've put, our little solar stellar physics little lesson there. Okay. Does that really bother people? I don't know how close the mic is. It's just easier than trying to mute the mic every single time I take a sip of coffee, because I really digging it right now. My magic bean juice. Okay, and there's some fixed star energy we're going to bring up too today to kind of weave into all of this. So today is what? The 29th. We have our moon still in Leo. Now, the first thing that happened this morning, as we're going to see here, is the moon came right into a square with Uranus. Now, Uranus is retrograde. It's still in the 13 to 14 degree area. And this particular square here, actually, let's go back just one click here, or a couple clicks. Right as the day was turning over here on the East Coast. And let me actually bring up my notes that I forgot to bring up. Okay. All right, guys. Because I want to start with Ceres, because this also is where is in conjunction with fixed star Aldebaran. So here's our first kind of weaving into the fixed stars, because Aldebaran is one of the four royal fixed stars, and it's in coherence, or it's related to Archangel Michael. So there's this sense at a level of the natural world, the seasons, agriculture, all of the things that Ceres represents, like actual Gaia and the function of the natural world to sustain and to nourish us, right? And the necessity for the contraction and release, or the yin and the yang of a growing cycle, an annual cycle, how important that is. So this is what she represents, and she's retrograde right now. So the first thing that happened so early this morning was this sextile between the Leo moon and asteroid Ceres, which is right over here, right? So there's our sextile, this 90-degree angle, 60-degree angle, like, wow, there's like some dyslexia happening right now. The 60-degree angle with Ceres at Aldebaran. And so with Leo, it is truly the release of the Kundalini. And I do feel like that the sun is, the sun being the ruler of this sign and the fifth house in astrology, the fact that we're getting a bombardment of solar activity right now that also is being potentially buffered if we are, in fact, resonating and in harmony, right? Not in dissonance, but in harmony with the grid of the planet, or the heartbeat of the planet. Because what happens now is it's truly the release of the Kundalini. And anybody that's ever had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening, or one where, it certainly happens, or one where you've intentionally done it, but you haven't really prepared the vessel for it. It starts to really have a strong impact. And so it's like being a child, though. That's the thing about Leo. It's confident and ego-oriented and artistically expressive. And the fifth house is where you take risks, but it's also very focused on the individual's nature, right? They're not really engaging anything outside of them, as if it's way more like everything revolves around me. And that's a very childlike type of perspective, not necessarily selfish, but it can be. I mean, that's narcissism in the Leo archetype is very strong. So, but it's also just where you are in the development of yourself and your personality, that you do have to acknowledge the perfection of yourself at some point, and the fact that you are the center of your own solar system and galaxy. And when we're all doing that at our highest level, then when we come together, that's the Aquarian age, right? That's the Aquarius at its highest. So when we start to get into like the real meat of and combustion aspect of Leo in the second decan, it's like children playing on a swing on a tree, right? So our consciousness is just swinging all over the place, back and forth and all over the place, but it's anchored. It's anchored on something that is very old, very rooted, very traditional, very strong, right? Which is an oak tree. This is the Sabian symbol I'm talking about. So we right, when we work with these energies, so Ceres is in conjunction with Aldebaran in a point of Gemini that's showing all the potential of where we're going, opening new opportunities. We have Aldebaran and Archangel Michael that represents the warrior of heaven, the defender in some ways, that represents success through integrity, right? Because it's a spirit, it's a heavenly battle in some ways. That's the huge oak tree, right? Is nature and the sustenance that the natural world provides for us, and the ability to tap in. That's the oak tree, right? And on so many levels, right? Not just, symbolically, but you can even think about it almost literally, because, the natural world, especially trees, are going to follow their natural course of growth. So, and they live really long time, especially a huge oak tree. You got lots and lots of decades, if not longer, under your belt if you're a huge oak tree. So while our consciousness individually is kind of upgrading from all of this solar weather, if we are able to reconcile that with something that is timeless almost, and certain and really strong, which is what Aldebaran represents, Ceres as the asteroid representing the goddess, who is Gaia in a way that she's responsible she's responsible for the agriculture on the planet, for the growth cycle and the seasons and all of the ways that everything that goes into creating and giving us nourishment. This is what Ceres represents. I know I'm kind of going over it multiple times, but it's really important that we get it. So while our consciousness is starting to, on a personal level, swinging around, it's Ceres and Aldebaran that are the oak tree, something that we can hang on, something that is so much older and stronger and wiser and secure than our own kind of fragile, like, awakening moment here. So again, tapping into the planet's grid, tapping into the warrior nature, which, Mars being at the very last degree of Libra is actually able to see the big picture, right? And to understand truly, the natural processes that we're all part of, not just know it, but actually truly understand it based on experience. So, but we are getting upgraded. There's no doubt about it. There's, in terms of the sun's activity and how it's impacting us. So, the best way is really to, realize that the planet itself and nature is like the huge oak tree. And so is Archangel Michael. It's something that we can hang from in some ways, right? Like the hanged man, but also as a child, just kind of swing around and enjoy it, right? We want to enjoy it. We need to bring some more joy and optimism into this experience, because it's about to get so intense, and we can't lose sight of that. So right after that is when the moon comes into that square with Uranus. So in 13 to 14 degrees. So this is amplifying this yearning even more now. It's a soul that is yearning for actualization and will bring about a dramatic release, right? A soul seeking to manifest through what? Our personality. This is the highest highest version of Leo is the soul seeking to manifest through the personality, through what? Our creative endeavors, artistic expression, romance, playfulness, joy, optimism, all of the, and dramatic release, through any artistic means that you find and creative means that you find. And this is also the time of year, at least in the northern hemisphere, when the plants are flowering and blooming. And what is that doing? It's attracting pollinators. And so it's also too in Leo that it's just like that being kind of a diva in a very good way, and it inspires other people ultimately when we are in our full nature. But right now it's still seeking opportunities for outward manifestation. The square to Uranus, though, damn, it takes us right back again to the necessity for reconnecting back into the natural world and be revitalized by this natural experience, or this reconnection to the natural world, simpler things. And Uranus in its retrograde, it's showing us that the path to our awakening into full knowing, right? Uranus, that the Stargate, the wormhole, the portal, is through the natural world. And this is Taurus, right? Through the natural communion and through something simpler, right? Not so outwardly combust, but much more of a, visitation and remembrance, and almost a turning off that part of our brain to just enjoy life, enjoy what the natural world provides for us, enjoy what what nature provides, or at least what is provided by nature, right? We could extend it further to what the creator provides, whatever the creator means to you, where that provides. So again, that's right there. So you can even see this roadblock, these fixed squares. Oh my gosh. Especially with Uranus, ruler of Aquarius, so really is at its detriment in Leo, so doesn't understand it at all, and it's just like, no, like it's about the whole picture here. You can't do that while your ego consciousness is fully intact, even though this is important. You can feel into that square. And so the resistance here, I feel like, is coming from this really strong desire and yearning to, shine forward in the fullness of who we are. And we kind of can't help it because of this solar weather. It's just really bringing these enhancements, it feels like, not even upgrades, like these enhancements that are coming in energetically. And we really want to act on them. We really do. I feel like it. And it's not to say that we can't. It's just that this square is really setting the tone for the rest of the weekend in terms of like, it's not that you shouldn't want to actualize and manifest yourself through the personality of this biological suit. But remember, it's important not to totally lose sight of how important it is for all of us to make this transition evolutionarily by returning to the natural world. I cannot stress this enough, how important this is and how important it'll be throughout this decade. It's not just, for this month. It's meant to start getting us attuned to it now. And the nodal, the moon's nodal axis shift into Taurus and Scorpio is going to make that much more amplified, I think. The Pleiadian revival, right? It's definitely coming. So it certainly is. So I just want to show you Aldebaran real quick in terms of the constellation, because here you see it. It's in the left eye of the bull. Aldebaran is in the left eye of the Taurus constellation in the bull. It technically means like before the Pleiades, because here's the Pleiades star cluster in the shoulder. So if in terms of the pathway along the ecliptic plane from our vantage point to these constellations, Aldebaran, we hit Aldebaran first because it's at that 10 degree of Gemini, and then we would get to the Pleiades. So it's like the vision, right? The vision ahead of what the rest of Taurus really represents, and opening to the new possibilities too, right? Being open to the new lands, being kind of a pioneer, and having the vision or the sight in order to see the path ahead, right? And so there's so much here that is bringing our awareness back to this need to use our inner eye and our entire biological suit to tap into the planet's natural grid system. I mean, it seems like it's a pretty consistent over and over. And the sun is just going to keep waking up and waking up and waking up. And our best way of buffering is to do exactly what I just said. And we all have our different ways of doing it, but this is something that's, we've been talking about it. I am kind of loving it, although the dream state has been pretty goddamn weird. I've also been very tired up until today. As a result. So the next point we're going to we'll go back to our chart here, is that the moon will be in another sextile to Mercury. Speaking of sun worship, this is a degree of Leo that has us identifying with the sun, as a form of revering the natural world. So it creates a yod, right? With a finger of God. So let's look at the sextile first. 20 degrees of Leo. Like I said, this is about, glorifying the natural energies. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily worshiping them. We're revering them. We're glorifying them. We are, showing our respect and our admiration and our love for these natural energies, especially the sun, right? Acknowledging what the sun does for us all the time. And so, and acknowledging the very consistent cycle of the sun, which is, we're coming in, the upswing to solar cycle 25, which is solar maximum. So it's just going to get more so. And the sextile to Mercury, in Libra, still in its shadow, by the way, but now direct, is, our minds and our nervous system. If we follow some sort of already transcribed set of instructions, or a containment system, or a wisdom that has been passed down, like the Torah, for instance. This is just an idea, not the Torah itself. That's not what I'm claiming. I'm saying that this is just a way to think about it. The Torah was the law. The Jewish law. It doesn't take the place of the experience of union with the Creator or God, for instance. Those are different things. The mysticism and the study of the law are different branches within Judaism. So where Mercury is about the law, right? And what is the law? How to live in harmony with the universe, how to find balance. And there's something to be said for this set of instructions that, yes, there's a limit to it because it's based on material reality. It's based on a very specific set of, ideas or a specific set of instructions, right? The Torah, it's the law, right? It's the form of it. So our nervous system in particular can really, if we follow the pathway of, these practices that manage our nervous system to be able to, hold the full amount of this Kundalini solar energy that's coming in, this will allow us to make the most in terms of transmutation to Neptune in Pisces, still retrograde until the 1st of December, by the way, but is having us really, it's a real challenge right now, but at least it's retrograde. So we have this opportunity within us to work with this disillusion energy that has to dissolution, like not disillusion, but dissolution, like to dissolve down into nothing more than a pure trust and a pure sensation of what is coming anew, right? Because when Neptune comes into Aries, roughly 2027, 28, I assure you, it'll be a new set of spiritual experiences. It can be completely renewed. And there's lots of opinions about what that may be. So this yod, or this finger of God, it's this sextile here that will allow us to transmute what otherwise are things that don't seem to fit together, because this is pure being. This is Neptune in Pisces makes it impossible to not be in the flow of everything that there is. And that means, that means propaganda, that means astral intrusion or picking up on the astral realm. That means karma, ancestral karma. That means all of the karma of the collective is realized and experienced in Pisces. And so Neptune is just, there's no boundary when Neptune's involved in Pisces because it touches everything and just dissolves it, just like water would do. We're being asked very to trust and to have hope for what is coming, and to really just be in that experience. And this yod is really really important, that we have within our nervous system the capacity, and we're really using something that's already come before, like a set of instructions or a set of or a framework in some way through our mind and our knowledge to really hold this energy that's really burning inside of each of us right now. And otherwise these things would not fit together. So this is how we make the transmutation, is to make this connection here to whatever it is, right? Like whatever your practice is, whatever the law of the universe that you operate under that allows you to live within peace and harmony with each other, somehow is going to provide the instructions or the means to hold an incredible amount of solar energy that we're all holding within ourselves right now. So big yod. Okay. So after that, we find that, where are we at here? So right after that is where the moon comes into a quincunx with Vesta over here. And what else or a square, I'm sorry, a fixed square with Vesta. And Vesta is in a quincunx or a trine. Oh my God, I'm losing it here. Oh, we already talked about that quincunx. Sorry, that's why I'm confused. So the moon's going to square Vesta at this degree of 20 to 21. Now, this is really important because not only is Vesta going to come into a trine directly with Neptune tomorrow, it's going to be, like I said earlier, the Sun and Mars and Mercury are all going to reach this point of 20 to 21 degrees and trine. And what does that mean? It's harmonious. It's supportive. You don't have to do anything to get the most out of this water trine. So we also know it's going to be very emotional. It's going to be very flowing. It's going to be very spiritual. And it's going to be very intense. And so when I share with you the Sabian symbol, we are about to embark on a month where people are really going to start pushing back. Okay. So 21 degrees of Leo. Okay, this is where it's squaring Vesta, and I'm going to share with you Vesta in a minute because I want you to, this degree is 21 degrees of Leo is basically what happens, so we're getting into the last decan of Leo. This is what happens the first time that your third eye opens from a Kundalini awakening and you are not prepared or it's spontaneous. It's like chickens. It's like, this is the Sabian symbol actually, so it's a pretty accurate description. It's like chickens flapping their wings like crazily trying to fly and they can't. It's a premature, it's such a funny visual. It's a premature expansion of consciousness because it's just like that Kundalini awakening comes up, shoots into your third eye, and you're like, what the hell? And you're either ecstatic or you are psychotic, right? This is, and I've seen both, right? And I've seen, I'm sure many of us have already experienced it at some level, what this feels like. So, it's number one is in a quincunx to Neptune. Again, this is why this is so important to have some type of container for your nervous system that allow an instruction from some old system that allows this to happen, whatever it is, right? Your prayer, your meditation practice, yoga, like Hatha yoga, any of the yogas really, honestly. Hatha yoga is physical yoga. Bhakti yoga is devotional yoga. This is what the Hare Krishnas make famous. Bhakti yoga is love and devotion for creator or, and having a beloved relationship. This is a lot what Ram Dass really, this was, I think, the cornerstone of what his spiritual work really was Bhakti yoga. Raja Yoga or Royal Yoga. This is like everything else prepares you for Raja Yoga, which is meditation and really being able to hold the Kundalini. Qigong, right? Tai Chi, any kind of martial arts. Will also condition the biological meat suit here to hold that. But there's, whatever works for you, but it's important to follow the protocol. That's what this degree is about, because what's happening is, by the end of today is just like people going, what, having that like premature and often, really kind of crazy expansion of their consciousness before they're really ready. Again, and that's the quincunx with Neptune. That's just like, just trust whatever's, just trust what's happening. Like it's all part of a natural process that's unfolding, even though right now it's very intense. Now, the square to Vesta is about so let me share the Sabian symbol because it'll make sense there. The Sabian symbol is obeying his conscience. A soldier resists orders. It's a readiness to face the results of a refusal to follow the authoritarian patterns of an aggressive society. It's an individual or a group of people that have come to realize that they are not in alignment with their values and ethics, are not in alignment now with the authoritarian patterns of the society that they're supposed to be a soldier for. This is the degree that the Sun, Mars, and Mercury are all going to have a trine to Neptune. Okay? This is supremely important. And I know many of us are already resisting orders and many of us are already refusing to follow the authoritarian patterns. But this is showing that the spark that's going to sustain each of us spiritually is this. And what is not going to sustain us is this premature expansion of consciousness that the moon in Leo is going to represent at this moment of the square. So it'll seem, there will be some friction here around how we each individually feel, right? And how we want to express ourselves in the moment versus this really strong reminder that what will hold us all together, ultimately, Vesta, right? The hearth flame, what holds us together, what sustains us all as a community, is to refuse to follow the authoritarian patterns. This is really a big deal. And this is the first moment of it. Because not everybody's going to respond to this in the same way. So just kind of keep an eye on how things go, because I see a lot of kind of like, whoa, people kind of losing it over the weekend. And I'm not surprised because it's Halloween and, amping up everything as well to get people, keep people on track with the controlled demolition. So this is a hack. Astrology is a hack so that you can make decisions for yourself. So we already talked about Aldebaran, so we're not going to do that. So where are we at here? I think that's really going to do it for today. Yeah, is this. Yeah, we're looking at the end of today here. So we're going to go into the weekend, the 30th, right? And start addressing Saturday's astrology, because we have some Draco activations that are coming, especially with the sun squaring Saturn is a Draco activation. So we'll talk about that, of course. And all right, let's see here. I'm enjoying the solar flares personally. I'm not enjoying the dream state necessarily. It's burning off a lot so that it's becoming very clear. And there's the township truck. Sorry, this is a total aside. They're always creeping and lurking. The township. You can't even build anything on your own property without the township's approval. I mean, this is how embedded in every facet of our lives that this authoritarian aspect really, really is. Anyway, you can't even build a deck on your property without at least the township I live in being involved somehow and getting their cut. So here's the 30th. We are... the moon will move into Virgo today, thankfully. Geez, that's going to really kind of ground everybody, I hope. If not, it's going to really bring out the control freak aspects of people if they're not careful. So let's go back. Great time to get rid of the clutter. This is always the time that I clean my house, because it's such a perfect way to do this. Let's see here. Let's go. So first, the moon will be in an opposition to Jupiter, now direct. Jupiter in Aquarius, now direct. So we're going to see here that there's a lot of audacity and perseverance required to control and play with these powerful energies, right? So we're going to be really wanting to kind of show it off in some ways, especially if we've made it this far and we haven't totally lost our minds. And we won't, right? Mercury is going to make sure that in some ways. Mercury in the position that it's in when it makes that sextile to the moon is going to, and Neptune as well, dissolving everything. So we take all of those things into account. We will have some way to funnel that energy. So we may be feeling like kind of showing off a little bit and controlling and playing with these energies and showing the perseverance, the amount of training that needs to go into it. Now, but that's from an individual level. The opposition to Jupiter is the tension between how we individually are working with this energy and how there's a massive expansion on the collective training that is going on for us to handle this amount of energy of a group of people all together. So there's tension. And we find the fulcrum of the tension. That is the goal here. And so yes, it's important that we are able to manage this energy very successfully and with some audacity. That's kind of what it requires. But at the same time, it's not just about us individually, but it's not just about the Aquarian collective or the human collective as a whole either. We have to balance this out in some ways. Now, Jupiter is very strong and just, it's larger than life in wherever it touches. But remember that Aquarius is like the laser focus. So it also doesn't wait till Jupiter comes into Pisces. Oh my gosh, that's going to be great. It's going to be such a beautiful sigh of relief. Right now, this is like an intense laser that Jupiter is just like, it's just throwing the thunderbolt. Jupiter in Aquarius is all about the thunderbolt. And so, into society constantly. Here, let me throw it here. This'll train you. You know what I just got in my mind? It's really inappropriate, I guess, but I think it works. Is imagine Jupiter throwing lightning bolts at everybody's feet and being like, dance for me now. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. Dance for me. You are, I'm training you to be able to act on command and to really harness these otherwise very animalistic energies, which is the Leo energy if you don't have a handle on it. So it's important too that we individually can feel like we can control this energy and have this space in order to showcase it in some ways. That's important too. So this is how Saturday, right after the changeover of, into the 30th at midnight or 1 a.m., it's how where it's going to make itself really known. So then Neptune is in that trine to Vesta, right, that we talked about, the soldier disobeying orders in a trine to Neptune. That is like, this is just pure trust and pure tactile hope in the future, just trusting it and having a very almost naive connection to what will be coming forward, what the newness that will be coming forward. Now, the moon comes into a fire trine with good old Venus, who's going to be coming into the galactic center territory very soon. So then we become very concentrated, like fully focused now. This is the last decan, especially the last 5 degrees of Leo. We are starting to really concentrate this energy on something more than just ourselves, to reach spiritual attainment, to actually get somewhere that is more than just for our own benefit, this real mastery of the Leo energy. And you can see it's going to be in a quincunx to Pluto, and is in a trine to Venus in Sagittarius. And we really are concentrating so much that we're letting the meat suit go in some ways, just like, it's like the yogi in the cave, completely unconnected to what's happening outside of us, even in our own body. And so, and Venus is in a very, very awesome degree that has to do with really reaching good fortune, especially to those who have managed to maintain their integrity within being part of a social organism, right? And there's something waiting for us, it's like a return to something. And so here's our opportunity to really feel into, with Venus especially, what it is. We can see the end of the road in some ways, right? You can see the cottage at the end of the lane, and you see the bluebird perched on the fence, and you're like, oh, this is, we're really reaching something here. Coming to the end of some sort of cycle and really being rewarded for maintaining our integrity as we come into synthesis with each other, or understanding of the big picture. So this total concentration that we're each having the opportunity to really engage with Leo, concentrated upon what? Inner spiritual attainment. It's really going to find a lot of traction and support to with Venus and our sensitivity to the world around us, showing us and exhibiting, the good fortune and the blessings that are waiting for us as we approach our home, right? A sense of home, a sense of sense of home, and not in an individual sense, because we're talking about Sagittarius moving into Capricorn. Home in the sense of a larger cultural structure, but we still have to maintain our own integrity within that process. How do you not totally lose yourself into the dogma of the belief system? This is really what this is explaining. So it's about concentrating that energy into our inner spiritual attainment. This is really going to show us where we need to step up that game and give us very palpable connections to our real life, and a sensitivity to those things that shows us, that we're on our way and that we have something waiting for us as long as we maintain our inner spiritual attainment and concentrate on it. Because right after that, the moon is then in this quincunx with Pluto, and it's like, we know what Pluto represents, and it's been pulling the thread out from the rug we're standing on for, months now, and slow burn, right? And the quincunx with the moon at this point is what doesn't seem to fit is that we have everything that we need within us, but we have to still cross the desert, right? It's like a camel with everything, all the water stored in the hump, but is still seen crossing a vast and forbidding desert. So we're going to feel that, that we have everything that we need, but we also are embarking on a really long journey in some ways. That's just like, that's not fitting at all, because where Pluto's at, because, it kind of is actually. This should be a very, effortless transmutational process. Normally, if it was something other than Pluto involved with this Capricorn, I would argue that would be a little bit more difficult to find the place where they fit. But Pluto makes it really easy, because Pluto is just like, here, I'm just going to destroy everything other than, you crossing the desert. So have fun and good luck. And you're like, man. But you do have it. We all have everything we need, which is the solar weather that keeps coming in, right? It's information that's coming in, and it is enhancing us, and we have everything we need within us as we are being bombarded with this solar energy to kind of cross this territory. So that's pretty substantial as well. And then the sun will square Saturn, right? And this is our Draco activation, where the sun is in Scorpio. And so the square here is, Saturn is providing a very strict, very structured, very crystallized form of of where we're going. These are the forms that you can look up to that will show you where we're going. And but remember, they're like wax figures, right? They'll melt as soon as they're exposed to any, or they'll be degraded as soon as they're exposed to any outside environmental influences of any kind, right? You have to keep these wax figures preserved and in, a place where they're taken care of. So yeah, Saturn and time, right? Time will have an impact on these as well, which I think is really interesting because it's Saturn. The square here, so we have these, and an authority, right? An authority and a responsibility to get to this place. The square here with our Draco related sun, it's not directly in conjunction with Alpha Draconis, but it's in a sextile to it. This particular, we're getting into a place where we have to calm the waters of our emotions and our intuition so that we can be open to higher inspiration. And so the square here is because, Saturn is just like, nope, this is it. These are the preformed archetypes of where we're going, whereas the friction is going to come from a really strong desire, a strong urge, and a really finding our fulfillment and our sustainment from just being open to these higher inspirations, to be like a calm lake bathed in moonlight in this moment. So you can see, and that, the Draco energy, for all of the bad reputation that it has, it does relate to the serpent medicine, and part of that, and having the Kundalini being released within all of us, the serpent medicine and is so related to the awareness and the potency and the power of this Kundalini energy too. So, things like psychic intuition and connection to that type of inspiration is very strong when you have a strong connection with the serpent medicine, opening your third eye. It's a matter of staying calm and balanced in the process of doing that allows the inspiration to come in where it may not have come in otherwise. So the square here is really just about us expressing and finding fulfillment, each of us, through being open to this higher inspiration, where Saturn is just like, nope, these are the forms. These are the forms that we are all looking towards that represent where the human collective is going. And I would argue to really lean into, and this is, like I said, the sun is the child and Saturn's the father. So this is a big ego battle too. So be prepared for that as well, especially depending on where you find Saturn and the sun. For me, for instance, the sun is in conjunction to my natal Venus at this exact degree in my 9th house, and the Saturn is in my 1st house. So belief systems and the broader, larger, wider horizon that we understand, our reality, bumping right up against, who I am as a person and what makes me unique. Having Saturn in the 1st house is a really, it's so hard. You can't get away from yourself, right? And who you are is really anchored. And so this is going to really be a huge ego battle, which I already explained. So, and then Mars comes right into Scorpio right after that. So then we have the co-ruler of Scorpio entering right after that, right? And the warrior's like, all right, it's time to go on this journey to the underworld. Let's go. I'm not afraid. So it's just going to add to the what's going on with the sun and this whole Scorpio aspect in relation to Saturn. And again, these are fixed squares, fixed water, fixed air. Ugh. These are some serious, and Mars is our ego. Let's be real here. It's the beginning of us. So, it represents our impulse to be anything, right? Just to exist. So it's going to make it pretty, and to have the moon in Leo still at that point, right? That is really about each of us and our ego and our confidence to be ourselves. Oh, there's a lot of focus we're going to be putting on ourselves, but at least Scorpio is making about productivity in our relational and communal interactions. There's going to be a lot of Oh boy. And then the moon comes into Virgo on Saturday right after this. So we are also expecting that CME to impact on this day as well. So there's another, and that may cause geomagnetic unrest, which means there's magnetic unrest in us too. So you just be prepared for a lot of disturbance in the force on Saturday, so to speak. And the moon comes in, and the first thing it does is come into a sextile with Mars. Now, this is where we can reconcile this incredibly potent Mars and Scorpio energy, a moon in Virgo, where we get to see all of the main features in its entirety, in its whole. Virgo, that this first degree of Virgo that is going to allow each of us the capacity to picture to ourselves clearly all of the important features and the overall meaning. It's like the ability to discern through analysis and discrimination and intuition at the very same time. This is an incredible thing about Virgo, is the ability to analyze, but also to see the big picture at the same time. This is going to really help reconcile Mars that's charging ahead on that tour bus to hell. It's like, let's go, people. We're going. This moment with the moon allows each of us to at least, invest this very discerning quality in our own intuition and our own feelings into this moment. It's going to be really important because right after that, oh, look at that. At the same time, pretty much, Mercury is in a quincunx to Neptune. So another adjustment moment, another transmutational moment of squaring the circle and the different, where our nervous system and our minds are really looking to recommune with all there is each, by actually going to that place. So we're going to find ourselves mentally, sending ourselves to the shoreline, right? And reconnecting as a society in some ways. Like we're all doing this together, but each individually in our own way. But again, this is about total submersion into the ocean at the same time. So how can we, at that point, there is no shoreline, there is no society, there is no definitive mental processes. It's all dissolved into the same thing. So that's where the adjustment comes in. How do we approach the shoreline of the cosmic ocean without actually losing ourselves mentally into it, but also we want to trust what's happening. We want to allow ourselves on a spiritual level to just submerge ourselves in the cosmic ocean, but we have to maintain some manner of connection to our immediate environment, which is what Mercury really is responsible for doing, is connecting us to the immediate environment. So there'll be, there's a tendency here to really want to, just dissolve and submerge into the whole thing, but we have to actually keep our minds about us, still in Libra, Mercury, and still in its shadow in that place. So then the next thing here is when we find that the moon is in a square to her own lunar node. So that would be a T-square if you saw the opposition point up to here. The moon would be the pinnacle or the apex of the T-square of the opposition. So 2 degrees, it's the contrast to the distilled essence of each sign. So 2 degrees of Gemini is, we've talked about this many times, is the receiving of, to being open and faithful to the receiving of the blessings that started with our journey into discovery from, of ideas and concepts. So this square here with the moon to Rahu, the 2nd degree of Virgo, is you have to let go of the mind and step into pure wisdom and compassion. And that most often comes through experiences of suffering and isolation. So the square here is, we're really open and really directed towards this openness of this reward for being faithful and open and waiting for the receiving of these ideas and concepts. And the square is that we know deep down, we know and we feel within us that there is something to be there is something that, and this has been coming up a lot with the rattlesnake, is that there is something to be said here for our ability to really tap into the experiences of suffering and isolation, because that's where real compassion comes from, is by being able to connect to your own suffering as well as other people's suffering. And that doesn't, that does provide a lot of friction with this mind and higher mind aspect that we're all journeying on at a soul level and a karmic level as well. And it's this moon and the squaring to each of these positions, right? The square to here, the square to here, is really about what it means. I think this is going to really bring us back to a very important and a very visceral experience of what real compassion entails and how we get there. So, I mean, Virgo is probably the most connected sign to the Christ consciousness. And being that Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo, again, Mercury will seem to be very much part of this conversation in its own way, because you're talking about the two territories of Mercury in a square to each other. So, and where's Mercury? Mercury is in Libra, applying our mental faculties to and our knowledge to living in harmony and balance. So we have to balance the state of being open to what's coming and being open to the future and being open to just receive new concepts, ideas in general. But we also have to be very, very emotionally connected to compassion and the wisdom that comes from the suffering and isolation that we've all experienced. And Mercury is again in this quincunx to Neptune. So talk about, surrendering and to suffering and isolation. I mean, Pisces in the 12th house is all about that. In a large social context, is all of us suffering and in isolation, or you're in suffering and isolation because you're in a hospital or a prison or some sort of confined situation. That's a 12th house is a lot of those things as well. So there's something here about Mercury really being part of this conversation with this square as we finish up Saturday. So when we come into Sunday, which is Halloween, there's a very strong likelihood that this CME already hit us, number one. And number two is Halloween, right? So the veil is very thin at this point, as many of us probably already know. And we are starting to really, we've gone from a state of being really deep diving, of really being open to higher inspiration. And now we are going to start actually addressing some social issues and start putting our, what we've learned so far into work, into actually being productive as we're coming into the 9th and 10th and 11th degrees of the sun in Scorpio. So let's start here with Sunday, right? Our moon in Virgo, first thing it's going to do now this is a real strong Draco activation, because the moon will be in direct conjunction with Alpha Draconis, as it's in there's quincunxes. Look at them all. They're everywhere. And here's another yod with this Draco moon, actually. The sun is in a sextile to the Draco moon, and then they have a yod towards Chiron. So there's some healing potential here. And of course, Virgo is about our own emotional hygiene, our own actual hygiene, and our own spiritual hygiene. So this is, and this degree is really not very easy, but it's a necessity, right? Where we use the very resources of our social order to fix the things that those resources may have created in the first place. And it's a dentist at work, right? So society created sugar, for instance. We created refined sugar that rots everybody's teeth out. And then we also create dentists in order to fix that issue, right? And they all come from the desire to be productive or to create new things in a social or interrelational situation. So But there's going to be some healing opportunities here. So first we'll look at the quincunx with Saturn, with the moon in direct conjunction with Draco. So we're learning to use our capacity here for self-expression, which came with our moon in Leo, according to cultural standards. And so there can be confinement, but there's a reason, because it's not confinement, it's the reality that we are inseparable from the physical world around us. And so we have to actually make use of the physical world around us in order for the roots that we've put down to actually draw in what we need, which is really what's happening at the Virgo time of the growing season in the Northern Hemisphere. Virgo time is when the fruit is maturing and will be ready to be harvested. So we're learning to use these capacities, especially these reptilian serpent capacities within a cultural context, right? There's a lineage of that's been provided that we're learning to use these capacities within. And so again, the quincunx here is with Saturn, as we just talked about. And so how do we adjust the use of these capacities in this way when there's such a strong and very an authority in some ways, and even based on time, right? Even based on space time, like this is just where it's headed, right? Nothing can stop what is coming, and we see these preformed potential images of where we are going as a society. But this is what needs to be adjusted in this moment is our own ability to utilize these types of, to emotionally express ourselves through the culture, which in some ways Saturn does rule because it is the ruler of Capricorn and Aquarius. And those things are very much tied to culture, because culture very much develops in the 9th house in Sagittarius and then becomes institutionalized. So we're learning to express ourselves through those particular, and it doesn't have to be the full culture. It can be a different type of culture that we find ourselves connected to. It could be the Draco aspect that we find ourselves in terms of harnessing the serpent medicine. But there's something here that is needing us to adjust ourselves to a very new capacity that needs some sort of stability, or again, like a protocol in some ways, to be expressed for the first time. It's like a little kid learning to dance, right? It's going to their first, did you take dance as a young person? I did. And so it's like going to your first class and learning like the new, the baseline steps, right? Like if you're in tap or ballet, ballet, right? Let's do that. You have 5 positions. It's the first thing you learn is those 5 positions. This is where, you need to know that, because everything builds off of that. So we have to work with that. Whereas again, it's like, oh, we don't have to do anything because Saturn is just like, nope, this is what's happening. This is what's coming. There's nothing that can stop the timeline. There's nothing that can stop what's coming. And this is what it looks like, at least in a very generalized way. So it's almost like, well, what's the point? Well, that's what all of these connections to Saturn are really bringing up, is our own work in relation to that. So there's that adjustment right there, and with Draco as well. So, if we accept that there's nothing, if we do accept that there's nothing we can do, and that we are just going to ride it out, and not participate in the getting there and what it means for after, because it really does make a difference for what comes next, then the Draco aspect will be used for, our own enhancement, rather than for the sake of healing ourselves or healing other people, using that to heal other people. But there is a protocol that we do and need to follow and have like a baseline at some level. So when we move past this, though, this is where we get the sextile with the sun, right? And within us, we have to feel like an expressionist painter, right? Completely original, completely unique, just putting raw expression on the canvas within us. Look at this. This is crazy. Look at these quincunxes everywhere. In the way that they're kind of like crossing over each other. But here's the yod with Chiron. So this reconciliation, on the one hand, on the outward expression, it's like being that dentist, right? We have to come up with something that is going to address what's already been destroyed. Election. So that's one way to look at it, but it's a nobody wants to go to the dentist. Right? It's a necessity that we have to produce in order to address the mistakes that have been made. This is where we're finding ourselves being fulfilled and expressing ourselves through. But really, the way we can reconcile that and the investment that we can make into each of us emotionally and vice versa is that within ourselves, it's like being an expressionist painter. Right? We're just putting raw expression on the canvas. We're not trying to do anything but be ourselves. And when we do that, we can really, like I said, we can harmonize with this rather difficult position and find ourselves in many different directions in terms of how we are going to apply this necessity of production. We have to produce something that is going to address the mistakes, like I said, that we've made. Now, again, here's the yod, right? So you take this sextile and then you use that energy to really transmute on both lines that have to do with what? Images that have new symbolic meaning. This is a really strong healing potential that's going to come from our ability to transmute ourselves in the face of what used to mean something that now means something else. And some teacher, right, is providing this for us. This is what this degree of Aries represents. So it's still going to trigger us and has been. And I think it's just getting more so. The more solar weather that comes in, the more that I think these topics and issues are coming to the surface and to our awareness. So it's a matter of just being ourselves in the moment, right? And being raw as ourselves and making no apologies for it. And in some ways, almost putting so much energy into being unique that we kind of let go of any protocol in this moment. And I think that's important. We need to be flexible. We need to be open-minded in this moment so that we can really express ourselves in this very productive way to like make some, to address some serious issues, right? And in that process, we will start to see how certain things used to mean something to us that now have evolved into something else. And we have a real healing potential by the end of this weekend for that. That's incredible. Venus comes into a conjunction with asteroid Juno, and this is really powerful. You don't see it on this chart, but the power is that there is consecration to an ideal, right? A flag bearer in battle. So something to consider is that the flag bearer usually didn't survive because they weren't armed. You could say that they were also not meant to be harmed and that there was some sort of like understanding that those individuals that carried the banner were off limits. But the reality is that you're giving of yourself totally to the ideal. You're carrying the flag into battle, no guarantees. And you're also holding the symbol, not going to battle in the war. And so Venus and Juno, right? Asteroid Juno in the sign of her husband, Zeus. Venus, another benefic in Sagittarius, is that they're going to come together at this degree, and it's going to, are we going to step into our responsibility in our relationships and our material resources? How important is it what we value? Because that's going to be brought to our awareness by the end of this weekend. What and who do we value, and what are we willing to do? Are we really ready to step in and hold the banner of that which we value, and feel a sense of responsibility towards? Juno is about the balance of the scales in relationships and the betrayal as well. So are we really ready to consecrate this ideal through the very physical world that we value, and to consecrate an ideal that is has to do with who and what we value. Are we ready to step into that? And Juno coming in is just like, yes, if you're ready to do this and you can step into this role, I will make sure that it's all balanced out, that there will be no imbalance in this situation. Now, sometimes this goes astray when she's talking about, or when she's addressing the role of her, the role of her husband, because he's, larger than life, and it's all big picture energy. He really doesn't think about how the details or the minutia of any of it. That's Gemini. So this is really important too, and very powerful. And we're going to really be kind of called to the carpet in some ways to do this, but also be really supportive. And then the moon comes into a trine by the end of the weekend with Uranus. Now Uranus is in a new degree. This is where the baggage comes in. We talked about this at the beginning. So this trine here is our ability to really centralize our own personality so far that we've been doing this work on ourselves to centralize it, right? We are being meticulous about our hygiene spiritually, energetically, emotionally, especially emotionally and energetically, because it's the moon. So we're picking up a lot that may not be ours. We are, you can see here that the moon came, well, we already talked about the yod. Okay. There we go. This trine here, right? It's like the base of a pyramid or the base of a triangle that these two are connecting, because they're earth trine as well. So Mercury or Uranus, in terms of the radical shift and the sudden reorientation of our perspective, that the third eye opens and we see the whole mosaic, not just our own role within it, but we see the whole picture. We can't, we're going to see what the baggage of social ambition and the accumulation of it is really causing in terms of our spiritual awakening on this planet. And this moon in Virgo in this moment is number one, this is in a sextile to Sirius. So there's this Sirian starseed activation with the moon in a trine to Sirius. Oh man, I just blipped out for a second. I'm so sorry. But this is about being able to consolidate or centralize ourselves in a state where everything around us is kind of hysterical. It's the Sabian symbol is a powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria. Now we may experience this outside of us, but with a Uranus that's retrograde and a moon that has it being very personal to us, I feel like this is going to be a lot more right now about our own internalized experience, our own self, how we feel about ourselves, our own intuitive and psychic channel with the moon, being able to really centralize this, as there's a lot of static and chaos around us, and there's a need to do this in this trine, right, to Uranus that is slipping into a new resonance, because it's a new degree about the baggage that we accumulate when we have an ego has some level of social ambition to accumulate things, to accumulate resources. That's what Taurus really is about the resource world. So we're going to get it's going to be many weeks that Uranus is in this degree. So be prepared that we will also be addressing within ourselves the awakening process, the global awakening process of humanity, that's really going to show what has to be dropped. What has to be dropped in a resource material way in order for us to go through this gateway with as little damage as possible. And it's going to be our ability to pull it together within ourselves emotionally that's really going to find some traction here. So, and Sirius being involved is really important, because Sirian starseeds, this is kind of their bag, right? Is being so fundamentally rooted and stabilized in the natural world and in the communities that they're part of and their role within it, that they can in fact really be a source of be a source of centralization and be a source of security in some ways when there is static and chaos all around. So that's very powerful. By the end of the weekend, I mean, we're really going to be called to the carpet, like big time. And so leading up to this is a lot of enhancement at a solar level, a lot of activation of our internalized energy, and feeling the necessity to really get rid of the clutter and to be very meticulous about our energetic self so that we can really discern when things start really popping off, I think, by the end of the weekend. Let's see where we're at here. So let's come into November, and this is just going to be real basic here. Just giving you the main themes. So the moon's still in Virgo on the 1st, but we have right here we have Mercury still in its shadow, right? This is not new territory yet. Is coming into a trine with Jupiter and is in conjunction with Spica, of course. So here we go. This trine. So lots of giving, lots of nourishment, a lot of resources that, and the fruits of our labor being really presented to us from a mental perspective, our ability to utilize these things in a mental way, to apply our knowledge of what has our labors have really brought forward. And Spica is really going to support this. And this has already happened, except that Jupiter was retrograde last time. So now it's really direct and like really throwing those thunderbolts in a outwardly manifestation type of way, right? And in our lives outside of us and moving forward, so to speak. So we're going to, again, this is going to provide a baseline or support between these two things, this air trine with Spica involved on Monday, the 1st. On Tuesday, the moon will move into Libra. Now we're getting into our balsamic phase because the moon is now moving into the sign that we had the new moon in on the 2nd. So we had the new moon. Actually, it'll be in quincunx to Uranus. So we'll go forward to that point, actually, because the new moon was in quincunx to Uranus, although it was a different degree, but the moon will cross that point again on the 2nd. And so what do we see? Not only is that happening, so we have this like time echo, right? We have this energetic echo of the new moon with where the moon is, but Mars is going to be in a quincunx with the nodes, or the north node, or Rahu, and Mercury is now going to square Pluto in conjunction with Arcturus. So we're going to and this is where Mercury was when it's stationed retrograde. So there's a lot of coming back around here on the 2nd that we're gonna have an opportunity to, reconnect with, to be, it'll be a time echo in some ways. It'll come back around. And this time Pluto is direct. And so this square here and the measuring of our ability to see the full picture of the harmony of the universe with life and death and rebirth all in the same vision, all in the same, mental picture in some ways, while Pluto is actively destroying things now. This is going to be at the same time that the moon reaches the new moon point, comes into a quincunx with Uranus. And so it's going to be another like, whoa, but it's going to remind us what this whole lunar cycle was about, which is finding our still point amidst all of the chaos that is now turning on as things have moved direct since that new moon. This is on the 2nd. The 3rd is pretty mellow in terms of what's going on. So the moon is going to meet Mercury and will slip into Scorpio and meet Mars as well. And it's going to be on the 4th that we have our new moon, 13 degrees of Scorpio. So let's just go over it really quick, and then we can call it a day here for this report. So there's a driving urge towards achievement, which is really at the root of any kind of interpersonal interaction, is to produce, right? One must try to go to the roots of the problems of these relationships, as well as to discover the principles, right? We're getting into the principles controlling the interactions. Can somebody say symbolism? Intuition is just as necessary as intellectual analysis. So with the moon and the sun together, this is a really incredible activation point for this, that our intuition and our feeling self and our external expression, our creative expression, our outward expression with the sun are in the same place with each other. So this polarity within us is coming together and seeding something, and seeding a very strong urge to get at the root of what's going on, right? This is setting the tone for the rest of the month, and it's opposite Uranus, right? And so it is the bad, you know what I mean? There's baggage that we could potentially accumulate when we go into these realms, right? We start to see things that we can't unsee. We start to discover things that we can't undiscover. Opposite Uranus. And so the tension is going to be towards, this challenge and disruption in a material world that is showing us what we have to leave behind. So that when we have a strong urge to really get to the bottom of things, it can really pull our awareness and attention and our energy away from just being in communion with the natural world and letting go of the social ambition, right? Ambition and social ambition is what Scorpio is all about, because it's the urge to produce or reproduce, if you want to think about it in a creative sense. Sexual alchemy, for instance, or just in a marriage and reproducing children. Those, to have the ambition to do that takes you away from the dropping of the ambition to accumulate things. So you can see how this opposition is going to provide a real strong challenge to us to really go into what is going on, because there is a really strong tendency right now, I would say, to let go of even trying to get at the root of anything and just fall back into communion with the planet. And I do believe that is important. And we have no choice in the matter. Uranus is making it pretty clear that this psychological crisis and this disruption in the material world is bringing us to a state of global awakening. But we each are in this place that it's time to start. It's really time to start going into the roots of the problems, really being willing to put together different dots that we've never put together before. This is also the same day, that Mercury is officially out of its post-retrograde shadow. So we're in new mental territory at the very end of Libra, which is full philosophical knowing. You see the full picture from a mental perspective and from a knowledge perspective. So this is important. Venus is at the last degree of Sagittarius, is about to go into Capricorn as well on this same day. So then it's she's going to really, what resonates with her in terms of, something in our value system, something in our relationships or our resources, our sensitivity to the material world, whatever representation pulls together and represents in a very material way our full social values system, whatever the one we're operating under, is going to then come into the moment of solidification. And Venus is actually going to station retrograde this season in Capricorn. So she's going to be in this area, and this is really going to start bringing the responsibility and a reality check to what our ambition really requires in our relationships, in the material world, and in our value system. So this is also about to start this new Venus type of cycle. And Juno will be at the galactic center at the same time. And so there will be this balancing point from the galactic center if we choose to engage it, that there will be about, we align with the galactic center and the galactic mission, which is where the full moon in December actually will be, is at the galactic center. The sun will be at the galactic center. So this is, again, another one of those time echoes where Juno is here, Venus was here, and we have this kind of ability to really connect in a very physical way to what this galactic mission really is, bringing our spirit into form, right? The sculptor at work. We're bringing it into form. So we're going to, there will be a balancing of the scales in terms of, our relationships and the relationship as a whole when we interact with this galactic mission, whatever it is for us, when we bring it through. There will be a balancing of the scales in some ways. There will be some sort of shifting. And then when we have the full moon in December, after the solar eclipse, it'll be at the galactic center. And that will be a huge, that'll be much more. I mean, we'll see what the sun's going to do at that point, and as it's amping up in solar maximum, or solar cycle 25, as it's in total alignment with the galactic center. It's going to be interesting and very, very potent, especially after that solar eclipse that happens in Sagittarius. So we have a lot coming down the pipeline, folks, and this weekend is certainly not going to be any shortage of opportunities to really get ourselves in order and our energy in a state of mastery, our personal energy in a state of mastery and meticulous hygiene, right? Because I do feel like that, we get a lot with these solar flares and this solar activity, and it's not always what we want to see, but it's information that needs to be coming through. And so having those intuitive channels be very meticulously cleaned out and no more clutter is so important. And we have a real strong opportunity this weekend to do that. And that also comes around with Halloween, right? The veil is thin. So connecting with ancestors as guides and connecting with non-physical guides is going to be really strong too. And they can really assist in this process for us. So I'm going to pop over to the chat real quick. Okay, see where everybody's at. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. There is, I think that there was something that we didn't get to in terms of the fixed star astrology, but we'll save it for next week because it'll still be relevant. And this is plenty of information to go on right now. So if you are interested in a reading, you can go to the website. You can also sign up for my mailing list through the website. That's in the description box below. You can reach out on Facebook and Telegram. I'm way more active on Telegram right now in terms of social media. So that's in the description box below. I'm still offering the How Does It End reading. We look at your natal and progress chart up till the end of 2021, and that's $99. And that's also being offered up until the 4th, up until the new moon, if you book up until then. You have to book and pay up until then, and then you will get that reading as well. And there will soon be another eclipse-oriented service that I'm offering at a sale that I'm going to send out very soon when I get all of the promotional material figured out and dial it in, and then I'll send that out through an email, and I'll post it on social media as well, so you can get in on that and see how the eclipse season is going to unfold. So that's 6 months of astrology from eclipse season to eclipse season, and the Pleiadian revival is a big part of this eclipse season because of where the full moon lunar eclipse is going to be. So if you're a Pleiadian starseed and you know that you are, this is an important time. This is a very important eclipse cycle for you, and it's worth exploring in terms of the, semi-long term, right? See how the eclipses will likely impact you and what it looks like in your chart over the next 6 months. So that's going to be available too. So I love you guys. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Halloween, however you tend to enjoy it. I'm not suggesting you should do anything or not do anything. Just know that the veil is thin, and it's just important to be aware of that as we are getting a lot of this solar weather. So, but darkness doesn't exist without light, and there's a lot of darkness right now, and it's going to get really intense. And so I welcome the solar weather right now, because I think it's really impacting us in a very positive, although very uncomfortable way. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, and thanks for stopping by. We'll see each other on Monday. Take care. God bless. Bye.